Hi everyone, I am Shakina the Neurodisruptor, formerly known as Halima Al-Hatimy. I am back again with another video. This video I'm talking about 5 reasons why I feel unsafe among Muslim men. So, reason number 1, my father. My father is a Muslim man. He is by far the most heinous, violent, evil human being I have ever met in my entire life. My father trafficked my mother at the tender age of 15 years old. He married her when she was just a child and he was 33 years old, because Muslims allow for this, and child marriage is also legislated in Islam. So he married my mother when she was still a child. He brought her here to Canada and abused the ever-living shit out of her. He literally beat, abused, and tortured my biological mother to the point of insanity. The scariest part of it all is that he was actually being supported by other members of the Muslim community. And so what really scares me about Muslim men is not only how violent a lot, if not most of them, can be, but how the Muslim community protects their violence and will, at whatever cost necessary, do whatever it takes to defend them so that they are not held accountable or responsible for their violence. You can see this very clearly in the way they defend their Prophet Muhammad, who was documented to be a pedophile, a war criminal, and a polygamist. Okay? My father beat women with impunity. My father abused children with impunity, and the Canadian government never did anything about it. The Canadian government was aware that my father was this abusive and this dangerous. They had enough evidence and they did nothing about it. So in addition to being protected by the Muslim community, Muslims are also being protected by the Canadian government. So if you ask me, I actually, quite frankly, at this point believe that Muslims have already successfully infiltrated our government, and now we're actually in danger of them taking over and establishing Sharia law here in Canada. The second reason why I feel unsafe among Muslims is that most of the men who sexually abused me were Muslims. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well, there are sexual abusers in every religion, every culture, every race. Absolutely, there is. The problem, though, is that they justify abusing women a lot because of their profit. There is documented evidence, especially if you look in like Sahih al-Bukhari, which is a book narrating a lot of the hadith on the Prophet, that talk about times where the Prophet actually allowed for his soldiers to take on sex slaves, and once they were captured from their opponents during war, right? So they would capture these slaves during battle, and Prophet Muhammad actually gave his soldiers permission to hold these women as sex slaves. And a lot of Muslim men today continue to abuse women and subordinate them, especially a woman like me who was basically an orphan. Because even though my parents were alive, they disowned me. And if you're an orphan, especially a girl in the Muslim community, and you're disowned, you are like Zakir Naik, one of their imams like to say, you're basically public property, and you're in grave, grave danger if you're an orphan child in a Muslim community. They will, for the most part, eat you alive. And it wasn't just me, I've seen this happening to tons of other Muslim children who were either orphaned or didn't have stable relationships at home with their parents. Okay? So that's one of the other reasons why I feel uncomfortable around them is that there are actually laws and legislation in the Muslim community that in Islamic and Sharia law that can be manipulated to allow men to justify on a religious level their sexual violence towards women. Okay, so that's the second reason I feel unsafe around Muslim men. The third reason is when I start advocating about gender-based violence in the Muslim community. A lot of men will be the first ones to come and attack me. They will swear at me, they will call me names, they will insult me sexually, they will make sexually derogatory and debasing comments towards me. I actually had one Somali Muslim man go as far as tell me that he would chase me out of the country if I didn't stop talking. And all I was doing was advocating against the very real forms of gender-based violence that are happening with impunity and in silence within Muslim communities. A fourth reason that I feel unsafe around Muslim men is that Muslim men are okay with the subordination of women. If you enter mosques, you will see that Muslim women and Muslim men are divided. And it's almost always Muslim women who have a smaller space in the mosque. I remember particularly when I used to attend Hamilton Mosque growing up, I used to absolutely hate doing my ablution in the women's washroom because the women's washroom was actually straight up frightening. It was dark, the light wouldn't even work in one of the stalls. Okay, the area was very small. I mean, they eventually renovated it, but they made it very clear that women were a secondary priority, that the first priority were men. And women didn't get a dignified place to pray in that mosque until they renovated it. Whereas the men always had a dignified place to pray in the mosque. What is most frightening about this is men are perfectly okay with this. I have not heard a single Muslim man protesting against this treatment of women in the mosque. Have never, and in fact, they actually, a lot of them celebrate it because it makes them feel like they are overpowering the women in the community, makes them feel superior, which they enjoy a lot. The fifth reason why I feel unsafe around Muslim men is that a lot of them continue to practice polygamy right here in the Western world. My father was one of them, but he would actually leave Canada and fly out to countries like the Republic of Kenya and marry young girls at the age of 15 years old, just like when he trafficked my mother. And he continues to do this to this day. And why is that? Because the Prophet Muhammad was a polygamist, and the Prophet Muhammad also groomed young girls in preparation to marry them and subsequently have intercourse with them while they were still children. And so he has that role model to look up to. And so there are tons of reasons why I feel unsafe living among Muslim men, but here are some of the reasons that I outlined. So I find it very unsettling, this whole case with Mohammed Fakih and Kevin L. Johnston. And even though a lot of the things that Kevin L. Johnston were questionable, and maybe he could have gone about it differently, I'm definitely very grateful to have Kevin Johnston's voice, especially on a government level. It makes me feel safe. To have men like Kevin Johnston, to have men like Stephen Harper, Maxime Bernier, Andrew Scheer. As much as these men maybe have said and done a lot of things that are questionable, and you might not agree with everything that they said, I definitely am very, very happy, and I feel relieved to know that I have these men who are advocating in the political arena and are not allowing Muslims to infiltrate the government and basically colonize and take over, because they would just be doing it a second time. They already, and what do I mean by this? they already colonized and hijacked Jewish law from Jesus Christ, right? The Prophet Muhammad claimed that Judeo-Christian law was actually just a prediction of Islam, and that Islam was the seal of the Abrahamic religions, and that he's the seal of the prophet, and of all prophets, of all Abrahamic prophets, which is, patently false. Very not true, and it can be proven in so many different ways that this is not true. But just in the same way that they colonized Judeo-Christian law many, many centuries ago, and then started this demonic cultish religion called Islam, is the same way that Muslims today are trying to infiltrate and colonize Canadian government, which was formed on Judeo-Christian law and principles. The United States of America was also formed on Judeo-Christian law and principles. And while their adherence to the Judeo-Christian laws and principles have been very questionable throughout history, it does not negate the fact that this country, both the United States of America and Canada, belong to God, and that we will not allow Muslims to bring their satanic ways into our government and our political arena and try to basically compromise what we are trying to build for the future of our country, which is peace, freedom, and safety. Right? Something that Sharia law cannot promise us. And so we want to make sure that we do whatever it takes to prevent Sharia law from making its way and fully establishing itself here in Canada.